Bitcoin lower, or at least the topic of this video and the focus of this video is going to be on how to know if the Bitcoin lows are in, and if Bitcoin is going to go lower, what essentially would you be looking for over the next, I would say, week to maybe 2 weeks of price action. And of course, it is a big day. It's a very big day because it's one day before the day after tomorrow, which is the halving. Everyone's excited about the halving. What does it mean? I don't know. But more importantly, I do want to go over in this particular video the interaction of the halving, the potential for the lows to be in for Bitcoin, and what essentially would confirm the lows to be in for Bitcoin, thus not indicating, Bitcoin's going to go lower. And we'll also talk about if Bitcoin were to go lower, what sort of areas might you be looking for. So let's just jump right in this one. This one's going to be maybe a little bit more on the longer side, but hopefully for good reason. All right, first things first, I need to get my notes out over here, and I do want to talk about just something that we've referenced several times in the past, which is the flavor of the cycle corrections, meaning that generally from cycle to cycle, Bitcoin likes to play at around the same sort of corrective phase in terms of price percentage drop. And in this case, we have seen throughout this current cycle, beginning in the year 2023, or beginning of 2023, I should say. Let me just make sure that you can see all of this over here. Now you can. Okay, great. We have seen about 20% corrections on average for Bitcoin. We've seen it 1, 2, 3, and 4 times thus far. Now, with Bitcoin putting the high in just below $74,000 and coming all the way down just below $60,000, it has played out just over a 19% correction. So, it's pretty damn close, within 10% of, the 20% correction. 10% within, it's 5% away, basically. And, we do see a little bit of variance over here, obviously, and we do expect a little bit of variance as well, historically, but ultimately, to put things into perspective, Bitcoin were to come down exactly 20%, that would put it kind of about $1,000 lower than the current low at about 58,750. And, maybe we get a wick down around there. That's completely fine. But again, pretty damn close to it in terms of percentage and price. If we go back to past cycles, I think 2017 is a great illustrator of this without, going too deep into this. We can see that in 2017, throughout the run, Bitcoin basically put in about 30 to 35% corrections the whole way through. Whoops, a little bit more than that one over there. Let's make that 30%, make it match the data, and it actually does. Okay, great. All right, so, again, 30 to 35% corrections. Again, a bit of variance in there, but ultimately did hold true throughout the cycle. So that is the big focus right there. So that would be, one point, I suppose, in favor of Bitcoin either having the low already in or very, very close to it. Again, let's just say, for example, say it went, 22% down from the, from the current high. That would be about $57,000 and change for reference. Anyways, back on my notes over here, and on to the next thing. I do want to talk about the signal that we pointed out earlier this week, which is going to fire off. Technically Monday is going to fire off, although today it's going to be somewhat set in stone, I suppose. And it is the weekly stochastic oscillator for Bitcoin CME here. And over the full history of CME, we've seen the weekly stochastic oscillator get into the critical zone several times. And every time that it has gone into the critical zone and then exited the critical zone, I marked off with these green vertical bars right here. And you can see, or not every time, but all of the times where this one did work out, but you can see that on these particular drop-offs, this did mark actually the next sort of higher low in an overall uptrend. So I did think that was rather interesting. There has been 8 times in the full history of CME. Of those 8 times, 6 of them have worked out for the next major higher low. Again, it might not be exactly on the low like you see over here in about a year ago in May of 2023, but very close to it in terms of actual price. Wasn't really much of a difference between here and the actual low right here on a closing basis. For the ones where it was a high, it was in 2019. In July of 2019, leading into the Rona dump, and then in the literal prior all-time high for Bitcoin in November of 2021, before it did produce, a nice 70 to 80% drop, crash. A fuck fest over there is what it really was. So fair enough. Anyways, in this case, we are going to see the weekly stochastic oscillator extremely likely close below the critical zone at the end of today, Friday, which means that when it opens back up on Monday, we will get this next tick, which will be presumably under that critical zone and should be theoretically close to the price low that we would be expecting for Bitcoin. Maybe not timing wise, although yeah, well, no, I would not say timing wise. I mean, we've seen several of these things take, in some cases like a month to really get going again. But ultimately, in terms of price, probably pretty damn close. If that is going to hold true here. So moving on from there, I should talk about now, what do we have? Yes, also the moons, the astrologers of this world. I got so much shit from this chart the other day. But by the way, we're going to have actually a strategy come out with the skeleton key that uses the moon phases, and might as well just become a fucking astrologer at this point. I mean, the saying is what? Millionaires don't use astrology, but billionaires do. I'm not a fucking billionaire, so I don't know. But again, logically, it doesn't make much sense to me. It sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook. Sounds like a bunch of monkey boy speak. But monkey boys been making some money if they ain't getting their fucking peepees chopped on by ducks. And if you know what I'm talking about, that's great. If you don't, you probably weren't here yesterday, which should make me remind myself to tell you that if you do find this content valuable or useful or even, I don't know, entertaining, please do consider liking, subscribing, because it does help out the channel, and it'll get these videos into your inbox each and every day so that you can learn more about some monkey boy action. Anyways, in this case, again, there's like one really mad lady, by the way, in the last video or two, left a comment that's like, you don't know the moons? It's a full moon and a new moon. And it's this one and that one. I already forgot, okay? I don't fucking care, all right? I don't care. Whichever one is the gray one is the one that typically produces upside movements. And over the past year and a half now, going back to January of 2023, where this bull market started, out of all 16 of those bull moons, whatever the fuck you want to call them. I can't believe I'm arguing over fucking moons. Jesus Christ. Call the internet hotline for mental retardio. Can't help myself, okay? Can't help myself right now. But yeah, in this case, oh, actually, I kind of missed one over here. I mean, that one did work out, to be fair. But out of 16, 11 of them did mark off major higher lows before Bitcoin continued just blindly upwards. So that is a just under 69% strike rate. And for the people on the other side who really don't believe in moons, and maybe I might put myself on that side as well, I have to humble myself and ask myself, okay, could I have traded better than that blindly? I mean, it would have been a lot less pressure off if I just fucking followed the moons. I'll tell you that. I mean, I don't really trade myself anyways. I just have a bot that does it for me. But in this case, just under 69% strike rate. I mean, that's like, are you better than that? Are you better than the moons? Yes, you are, sir. You're special. You're very, very special. Anyways, yes, so we've gone through that. The more important thing about this is that we're going to get another one of these Bula moons in about Monday, Tuesday, as they do happen about 14 to 15 days apart from each other. And in this case, 14 days or 15 days out would put us at Monday to Tuesday, the 22nd, the 23rd of this month of April. So likely marking off potentially the next higher low in a series of higher lows, and playing into the overall next point that we're going to get into this video, that Bitcoin is very likely poised for a bounce here. So this is where things get really important on this video, because we're going to talk about, one, the likely bounce incoming, and then two, what if present or if occurred would imply that, hey, the lows are in, not necessarily saying that Bitcoin's going to, moon exactly from there, but the lows are in, and you should be expecting sideways and upside from that moment. So first things first, we do have a highly probable bounce incoming, notified by the meta signals setup over here. Again, MetaSignals is a service that I've actually personally invested in, and I'm an advisor for, so I'm heavily biased again, but they did fire off this one on Twitter yesterday for Bitcoin specifically, 4-hour time frame, at the price of 62,500 or so, and we do have target 1, 2, and 3. Now, just because there's 3 targets doesn't mean that they're all going to get hit. Obviously, the lower ones have higher probabilities. If you have access to the MetaSignals Discord, which I do have a link to in the description below, they actually give out the probabilistic areas. But I believe that target 1 is about an 80-ish% probability, very, very high probability. But it's $1,000 away from the entry, which in my opinion, is pretty fucking good. Crazy. Target 2 is 67,000 bucks, which is very important here. I believe that is closer to a just under 60% probability, but I'd have to reference that for myself. And target 3 is like a lower than 30% probability. It's very, very low. I mean, it's relatively low probability, but that would be on new highs actually for Bitcoin, 76,340. The reason why I'm interested in target 2 here is because it's very, 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 very close to where I would look at Bitcoin as confirming the next sort of major low in, and it's likely to trade sideways and up from that region. And I wouldn't be expecting anything lower than whatever the price was before, or the price low was before that. Oh fuck, and I completely forgot to talk about this over here as far as lows are in. Oh, I done goofed again, man. But you've seen this one many times now. It's Bitcoin production cost fundamentals chart. Again, the reason why the halving is important is because we're going to see the cost to produce a Bitcoin double. And this cost has, well, been around 30,000 bucks prior to the halving. So on the halving, it will go up to 60,000 bucks, meaning that anything below 60,000 bucks is likely a value area. We've seen a couple weeks below 60,000 bucks in the past week. Those are probably good opportunities long term. Again, I'm not saying that Bitcoin can't move lower here, but for reference, the last time we had a halving was back when over here, you saw it double up, boom, it comes back down, test below it. In this case, actually twice, or 1, 2, 3 times, and then never again, really. In 2017, a little bit more, to be fair, a little bit more, dumps off more, and we'll actually go over exactly what to be looking for in that particular instance. And in 2012, a lot more similar to 2020 in the sense that, I mean, this one just never, it was the low before never going lower. So that is the big focus really in this next day. Anyways, as this bounce does occur, the question is, how high does it get? Also, I should be aware, or should aware you, that Friday does have a statistically slightly higher chance of a positive closure than not. If you look at all of the Friday closures from the beginning of 2023 till current time, 56.25% of them have closed positively for an average return of 2%. Okay, 56.25% is like barely better than five out of 10 times, right? So, it's kind of a coin toss, slightly in favor of upside. On the times that it has lost an average of 1.68%. In this case, I actually do think that Bitcoin's probably likely to close to the downside today. If it does close, closer to that 168 region, that would put Bitcoin at 62.5. If it does close 2% up, I mean, that would put Bitcoin closer to almost 65,000 bucks, just below 65,000 bucks. But, what is today likely to be? Probably a boring day. Probably tomorrow is going to be a boring day as well for the halving. I mean, maybe a wick thrown lower, but ultimately, I wouldn't be looking for closing new lows before this bounce does occur. Also, in alignment with a bounce are a couple things over here. Okay, so of course we have the weekly HPDR bands. We can see that the weekly HPDR bands has played the old bing and bong, losing the median and then testing the 38.2 level, as you can see right here. With that in mind, we are starting to see volatility contract, or continuing to contract, I should say. So the way that I would interpret this is that Bitcoin's likely to trade sideways and probably closer towards the median. Now the median is at 68,000 bucks. Probably comes down, if I had to guess, on this next closure, but keep that one in mind. And I'd be expecting some sideways from here. Now, here's the thing. What would be, and this is the big focus of this video, or the big topic of this video, what if present would indicate that Bitcoin lows are in? Okay. So in this case, I'm going to make a pretty simplistic analysis of this, and then if you want, I can explain a little bit more. But basically, on this bounce, if Bitcoin bounces back up and closes above, very specifically, the 61.8 level right here at 68,200, and you start to see higher term time frame closures above there, the lows are very likely in. Doesn't mean, again, that Bitcoin's just going to go straight moonshot right there, but the next, I'd be expecting Bitcoin to just generally be a buy anytime that it comes back down to, low 60,000 bucks. I'd be looking for a higher low, basically. So that would tell me that, hey, the lows are in. If Bitcoin bounces up over this next week, maybe 2 weeks, we'll see how long this one takes. I think it could take a while. And let's say it fails below 68, especially, or even at, even at the 50% level, which would be another kind of area of interest at 66.5, I'd be expecting Bitcoin to make new lows. later this month or into May. Why do I say this? Okay, to explain this, well, we'd have to go back to the past halvings here, right? And in this case, we can see that on those past halvings, when Bitcoin, in this case, this was 2020, reclaimed the 618. Yeah, it did come back down and retested the 382, but the lows were in. The lows were in. In 2012, when Bitcoin did the same thing over here, once it reclaimed the 618 or traded above the 618, in this case, I mean, it didn't really even stop, to be honest, but it was just upwards and onwards from there. However, in the time where we did not see that happen, which was 2016, Bitcoin rallies up after the halving. You can see right here, does not even test nor close above the 618 fib after the halving, and then comes back down and makes a pretty significant, I would say, a significant new low from that halving closing price. On a closing price basis, lost 17.5%. I mean, that is significant for sure. That would put Bitcoin into the very low 50s. So I would be cognizant of that. And then also, if we looked at the Bitcoin production cost fundamentals chart, this is the time where it did live below that number for a little bit of time. Now, in hindsight, long term, did you really care about it? It's a question that only you can answer. I would just look at this chart and be like, I don't know, maybe not, if I'm a long-term investor. But going back to the one over here, that is the big focus on this bounce. Does this bounce reclaim 68 and change, or you could even say 69? 69 was kind of the prior breakdown level. If it does, game on. Maybe not immediately, but sideways and up is very likely the next direction. If it fails there, if you see a rejection in an obvious lower high, Bitcoin's probably getting ready for a breakdown. And to be fair, as of right now, I would say that price action, just if you're looking at it from a fractal nature, which I don't know if that's wise in this particular instance. There's a lot more similarities to 2016 than the other two cycles, just for what it's worth. As pre-halving, we've seen about the same percentage correction here, but I won't go over that because it's just, I don't know, it's just probably getting too long at this point. All right, we're 17 minutes into this video. Yeah, let's make the rest of this painless. Okay, so what else do I have? Let me just make sure. All right. Oh, yes, okay. Another tick in favor of the lows likely being in or very close to being in would be this. The similarity between the correction that we saw in early January of this year to the correction that we're seeing right now, so this area right here and this area right here are very similar, even in terms of the HPDR bands on the weekly for CME, and also in terms of the HPDRO and the HPDRV. We're seeing a contraction on volatility, and we're seeing the HPDRO, head down just below the zero read right here, while volatility contracts. And during this time, Bitcoin seemingly coming into the bottom end of the blue range, even in January. It did test actually the 50% low, which for right now is $55,000. So fair enough, could be there as well. But as you can see, pretty damn similar here from a lot of different angles. So, does Bitcoin do something like this? Maybe yes, maybe no. At the end of the day, I want to see how high this bounce gets first. There'd also be like a very obvious thing that if happened today, like I'd just be generally bullish on Bitcoin. If Bitcoin were to pop back up and close today above 65,500, yeah, that would probably do it for me. But for right now, I think we're going to get clarity on this situation this next coming week. And if you do see Bitcoin above 68 on a higher term time frame closing basis, I would go as far to say that's, it's time to be mindful of sideways and up and coming. Until then, there is still risk to the downside. The same metric that we've been using this whole way down for the daily stochastic momentum is still positioned to the downside. Yes, it is getting into the critical zone here, so theoretically it's going to be more difficult to keep up that momentum. But the current pivot is 65,500. The 2-day time frame continues down as well. We'll be hitting, however, the trendline regression that we have coming in from the last few major lows on Monday. On Monday it will. And then the weekly obviously is going to be down as well, but we already covered that in the beginning, and that is potentially more of a higher low signal than not, or at least 6 out of 8 times it has been. So, okay, long video today. I apologize about that, but I did want to get everything in here. I did want to be a little bit more, nuance on this video and go over, all of the different scenarios that we've been really covering on this channel now for the past 2 or 3 weeks. I've been trying to keep them smaller in this past 2 or 3 weeks, but now that we're just 1 day away, I figured it'd be a good time for a longer video, kind of going over all of this sort of things, especially for the people who've been on this channel for a while now, and you've been following up on these and want to put all these puzzle pieces together because, I don't know, it's fun for me to do too. All right, fair enough. Yeah, that's going to do it for today. And tomorrow we get the halving in, so we shall see where the bitcoins, where the corns lead us. All right. With all of that said, I'd like to wish you the best of the best. Take care, much love, and fuck you, and see you tomorrow.